on your county board of elections website and find out where all of the early voting locations are. The larger the county, the more early voting locations. Give you an example. In Greensboro, there are 28 early voting locations. To my knowledge, I was talking to a friend of mine in Wake County today. I believe there's something like 32 or 35 early voting locations. We were kind of going back and forth on that number. In Durham, there's up to, I think there's almost 20 some early voting locations there. If you go to your um, your county board of elections, and I'm gonna I'm gonna quote BJ Levette saying Google is free. You can Google your Cumberland County Board of Elections, Franklin County Board of Elections, and those websites for those boards of elections will come up where you can go and exercise your ballot, your early voting ballot. But when you're at an early voting location, you can register to vote and vote on the same day. We have same day voter registration during early voting only. So if you try to go, as you or friends or family, if they try to go and register and vote on election day, they will be turned away if they are not registered voters. The best thing for them to do if they are interested to go and vote during this time, but they're not registered. And when we talk about people not being registered, let's say someone has moved to the area in the last couple of weeks. Tell them to go and vote early. That way they can register to vote and they can vote on the same day. Okay. If you have a young person that is turning 18 before November 2nd or on or before November 2nd, they can register to vote and they can vote during early voting only. I want to make sure I say that over and over again because every year when we kind of debrief from the election cycle, we have somebody that got mad because they tried to go and vote on election day and they were like, well, how come I couldn't register to vote and vote on election day? It's because you have to, if you're going to register and vote, you're going to have to do it during early voting. Linda Riggins Rhodes, I believe you came off mute. Okay, she went back on mute. If you guys have anything to say while we're having this conversation, just come off mute. Either do a raise your hand or come off mute and we can address it. We can go from there and have a really good conversation. So again, if you want to register to vote, you have someone who's new to the area, you have someone who's going to be of a certain age, and they're going to be of voting age to vote between now and the 2nd of November, take them to vote early. Okay. Your college students who they didn't register to vote on campus right now. North Carolina A&T is in fall break, and we've had a number of students who are from North Carolina say that they're going to go home and vote. Now we can't we can't police that. We can't say that for absolute certainty, but there's a good chance that, I mean, as much as these young people have been hearing about voting, I'm going to take them at their word. And if they say that they're going to go and vote when they're at home, then they're going to vote when they're at home. We've had a number of kids put on Facebook, put on Instagram their I voted stickers where they voted early because they've gone home to vote early. Again, this is a long period. I want people to be mindful of checking their voter registration. There have been some instances, and there's been a lot of controversy and I guess a lot of brouhaha in the news about voter rolls being purged. I think it has happened. It has not happened to anyone that I know specifically, but the one thing that I don't want to happen is I don't want you to get to the place where you are looking for, where you don't know that where your vote has been purged. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in the chat right now. I went to the Board of Elections, the State Board of Elections website, and I went to the voter lookup. What you can do is when you click on that particular link, you can add your name, your first and last name, those are required, and the county that you live in, hit search, and you'll see if your voter registration comes up. Your voter registration comes up, you're perfectly fine, you're good to go. If your voter registration does not come up and you know that you have registered prior to this or you voted in prior elections, and you are technically an eligible voter, I would reach out to the Board of Elections post haste, get to an early voting. I would get to an early voting location as quickly as possible, and I would get registered to vote and vote same day voter registration. Okay. So that is in the chat. Please, ma'am, please, sir, if you could go, if you want to go to that link, if you want to go to that place and you want to check your voter registration, by all means, do it certainly while we're talking. And if anything comes up that you want to talk about, um, during this call, we can, or if you want to talk offline, we can talk about that as well. Okay. Now, I know that there are some people who have a difficult time getting out, or you have friends and family that don't really move around very much. And voting by mail was a huge deal in 2020. You remember we were in the midst of the pandemic and people were a little nervous about getting out and voting in person. They were a little skittish about that, or they had health issues that would not allow them to kind of go out in public. Absentee vote by mail is available in North Carolina to all registered voters. To request a ballot, you can use the North Carolina absentee ballot portal. And I will also put that into the website, into the chat. A lot of this information is going to be on the State Board of Elections website. And I mean, that of all the State Board of Elections websites that I've seen across the country, a lot of people always say I'm biased because I'm from North Carolina. This one is probably one of the most easy to navigate. I'll put the State Board of Elections website in there as well. Um, Understand this, you can complete the paper North Carolina absentee ballot request form for 2024 and submit it to your county board of elections in person or by mail. Okay. The deadline to request a mail-in ballot is October the 29th. Although elections officials encourage voters to get that information to request their ballot earlier than later to ensure that the ballot can be completed and received by the Board of Elections in time to meet the deadline, which is 7:30 on election day. Okay. If you're going to do a mail-in ballot, and a lot of people have a lot to say about the USPS. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of things that they can say, and a lot of those things are probably very true. But I have not heard of a whole bunch of problems with the Postal Service. They do the best they can to try to get ballots to the boards of elections as quickly as they possibly can. Again, not taking up for the election for the boards of elect for the Postal Service, but I'm going to assume best intentions as I normally try to do. And they're doing the best they can to get people that get the information, get votes to people as soon as they can. Okay, let me stop right here and just kind of open up the floor for any questions before we go into sample balloting, early voting, voting on election day, and photo ID. Let me stop right here and just answer any questions that anybody might have about any of the information that we've talked about thus far. Going once, going twice. Okay, we're going to keep it rolling. So now that we are in the election period, your sample ballot should very much be available to you. You should be able to find it. And there's a number of different places where you can go and you can find your sample ballot. In my opinion, the best place to go find your sample ballot is on the Board of Elections website, because that's coming straight from the Board of Elections. It did take them a skinny minute to get this information up, and I think you guys will remember that there was a candidate that had to come off of the ballot, and they sued to get their name off of the ballot. That's what took a little while longer for everyone to get their to get their sample ballots and for those to be loaded onto the website. So that that now that situation has been rectified, sample ballots are in fact available on the Board of Elections website. And I'm going to use myself, if I could share screens really quickly. You guys get to see some information about me. Oh, okay, we can't share screens. Never mind. So your board of election. Okay,
Please try again.
okay, yes, ma'am. Yep, there we go. Okay, yay! I should have told you. It's my fault. All right. So we're going to share the screen and I'm going to navigate through this with you guys. So I'm assuming everyone can see my screen and you see this is the registration lookup that I was talking about just a few minutes ago. I've added my first name and my last name. The red stars are obviously required. And I've added my county because I mean I'm the only Montica Talmadge. I like to think I'm the only Montica Talmadge in North Carolina so far. All no evidence to the contrary. But if my name was something like we'll say Jane Smith, obviously there's going to be a lot more Jane Smiths, or if you have a more common name or a more common sounding name, you might want to use your county because that will narrow things down pretty quickly. So we're going to hit search, and obviously I pop up. And yes, for those who didn't know, my middle name is Ashley, and I am an active voter in Guilford County. So I'm going to click on my name. And now you see all of my information. You see my address, and I'm not showing you all anything that I'm not uncomfortable showing you. So just so you know. But I also wanted to kind of point this out. This is how this is just as easy to find your information. So, just a heads up. Um, I live in Guilford County. I'm an active voter. Yes, I am a member of a particular party. And this gives the list of all my jurisdictions, what congressional district I live in, school boards, county commission. This also gives my election day voting place. So emergency services training room right up the street from my house. So let's look at the sample ballot. All of you have one. Um, all of you should be able to find it. So we're going to looking at your sample ballot. This is what mine looks like. Okay, not everybody's looks just like this. It's the basic structure is very much the same, but I obviously have some folks that I'm voting for that y'all aren't. I mean, we may not all live in the same area. But you do have the president, you do have governor, members of Congress. Our entire Council of State is on the ballot this year. There's members of the Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, and members of the North Carolina General Assembly. There's also on my sample ballot, there's also district court races, the county commissioner, the register of deeds, and a nonpartisan election for soil and water conservation district supervisor. Now, one thing that is going to be standard on everyone's ballot is a constitutional amendment. And this constitutional amendment is to provide that only a citizen of the United States who is 18 years of age and otherwise possessing the qualifications for voting shall be entitled to vote in any election in this state. So that is going to be on everyone's ballot across the state of North Carolina because that's the way that's the way we amend our constitution in North Carolina. We don't do I think you guys may have seen in other states where they do ballot initiatives and things like that. We don't do that in North Carolina. We are constitutionally prohibited from doing things like that in North Carolina. So we have to do it on the general ballot, and that's how we that's how we got voter ID. I think you guys remember some years ago we had 6 constitutional amendments. I think like 4 failed, 2 passed, and voter ID was one of the ones that passed. So what I'm suggesting for everyone, our ballots can be very long. You see my ballot's 2 pages. We have 2-page ballots in North Carolina, front and back. What I'm suggesting to everyone as you're looking at this ballot, when you do go into the voting place, flip it on the back, vote from end of ballot up, go all the way up to the front page, flip it back on its side, you vote from the bottom again up again, and president should be the last thing you vote for because you're going to vote for president. A lot of folks, they think, oh, I'm just going to vote for president if I vote for, let's say, the Democratic president, that'll vote Democrat all the way down. That is not the case anymore. At one time in North Carolina, you could vote straight ticket, Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever. That was taken away from us, I believe, in 2010. So that is not something that we're doing anymore. It's also, they also got rid of the tax checkoff funds in 2010 as well. But you can't assume that if you just vote for one of these folks in the presidential box that's going to take care of everything. You actually have to vote your entire ballot. Okay. So any questions about the sample ballot? And I'll stop sharing. Any questions at all? Okay, so we're going to keep right on rolling then. So earlier you heard me say that I'm telling people that early voting ends at noon on the 2nd of November. There's a reason why I'm telling people that. Because if I tell them, and what I've noticed over the last few years is that if I tell people that the actual time that it ends, they try to push it out and push it out and push it out, and they get there at like 4 o'clock, and folks are like, "Well, what happened to early voting? It was supposed to go until 7:30," and I'm like, "No, that's not how that works." Election day early voting and early vote, I mean, election day voting and early voting are two very different sets of circumstances. Okay. And I'll go into that in just a second. All right. So early voting, you can vote during in-person early voting, October 2nd to October 17th, November 2nd, at any early voting site in your county. Okay. You do not have to vote in your precinct in your county during early voting. You saw on my ballot, on my page for the Board of Elections, that my voting location is up the street from my house on Meadowview. That's not an early voting site. But if I wanted to go to the Dudley building at North Carolina A&T's campus, or if I wanted to go to Barber Park and vote, if I wanted to go to any number of the 28 places across Guilford County to go and vote early, I could do that. As long as I am a registered voter in Guilford County. Okay. Now, if you all happen to know people in the western part of the state, there are going to be some concessions made specifically for them, because Asheville and parts of other parts of the western part of our state are still just a mess. So they're in the process of finalizing those particular details for them. But in my opinion, it's more important that they know that information than I know that information. But as soon as I get that information, and if you have friends and family in that part of the state and you want that information, I can get it to you. I do not have it right now, but I can get it to you as soon as it is made available, and it is made available to me. Okay. I just want it to be I want it to be clearly understood that during early voting, from now until November 2nd, you can vote at any of the early voting locations in your county that you are registered in. Okay. If you are registered in Rockingham County, then you vote in Rockingham County. If you are registered in Guilford County, you vote in Guilford County at any of the 28 locations. Now, let's be super clear about this. You still need to take your identification, okay? Because we are in a space that voter ID is a thing in North Carolina. We can't get around it. It is what it is. Take your registration. Now, we can put a quick pin in early voting, and let's talk about voter ID real quick. A couple of weeks ago, we were in a situation, some of us were in a situation where it was said that you had to have a star on your ID in order to vote. That is patently false. You do not have to have your real ID to vote. You don't have to have it. If you have it, great. They're not going to turn you away. But you do not have to have your real ID to vote. Anybody that tells you that, I would question the veracity of their information, because that's not true. Now, do you have to have a real ID At some point, yes. And I think it's by May, sometime May 2025, everybody's supposed to have their real ID. But that's not for this particular election. You need to have an identification that has your name and that has your picture on it. Okay. So like students at North Carolina A&T and UNCG are using their state issued student ID, and they're being allowed to vote because it has their name and it has their picture on it. Okay. I went immediately when I moved to Greensboro, and I went to the DMV and I got my ID updated so that, just for precaution's sake, my name, my picture, my county, and my address are all on my identification. So if I go to the Board of Elections to vote at any particular time, all of that information matches. So they can't try to come for me and say, yes, ma'am, I see you, Miss Carolyn. They can't try to come for me and say, well, you know, you don't live in North, you don't live in Greensboro. Yes, I do live in Greensboro. That's my address. This is where I live. It matches the Board of Elections information. So that's just me covering myself, but it has to have your picture and it has to have your name, Miss Carolyn. What is your question? And thank you for asking it.
I have a son. He's 30. His license was taken from him and it's suspended. So now he needs to register. He works on base, Camp Lejeune. Will he
Mhm.
be able to use his military ID?
Yes, ma'am.
Do
Yes,
he
ma'am.
need
He can
anything
use,
else? Social security
no,
card and birth certificate?
no, ma'am. I don't believe he's going to need his social security card or birth certificate. The best thing to do, because I do believe military ID, like if you either are in the active duty in reserves or you work on a military installation, that is supposed to count as identification because it's federally issued, right? If all else fails, if you have any questions about that, Board of Elections,
Okay.
reach out to the Board of Elections and double check to make sure that that identification is correct. I would definitely ensure that if he has to re-register to vote, definitely go during early voting and make sure that that piece of the puzzle, a piece of the pie is squared away.
Okay, because he wasn't, when I looked to see with my other children, he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't registered at all. So he needs to
So,
register.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Jennifer Moore put a very good question into the chat. How long do early voting sites stay open? It's a good question. In Guilford County, and Jennifer, that's where you are, correct? Okay. Um, Early voting sites, they're generally open at least 12 hours for the day. Let me double check, make sure I'm correct on that. Yes, okay. I'm trying to find that information so I can give it to you for sure. Here we go. Okay. So I'm gonna put this link into the chat so you guys can take a look at it. And I'm going to give you this as well. Oh. All right. So we're looking at this again for Guilford County, and these are the early voting dates and times for early voting locations in Guilford County specifically. So they just every day they open up at 8 a.m. and they close by 7:30 p.m. every day, with the exception of Saturday. Yesterday, they closed at 4. On Saturday, the 26th, they close at 4. And next Saturday, or 2 Saturdays from now, on the 3rd, they close at 3. They're closed today, which was a little weird. And a lot of churches and a lot of faith communities are going to do a souls to the polls on the 27th. In Wake County, I'll give you an example. They did souls to the polls today. So the early voting location was open today, but then they're going to close on another given day. So they just have to be open they have to be open for majority of these days. Okay. Remember, bring your voter ID. You'll be required to show it. But I tell people, on the last day of early voting, I don't mean to just, for it to be to be I guess disingenuous, but I tell people that early voting closes at noon so that they'll be more apt to go in there and get it done. Because if I tell them at 3 o'clock, they're gonna try to roll up in there at 2:55, and then they're gonna get mad because they may have to stand in line. This is another thing that I want to make sure that people understand. If you're in line on election day and the polls open at 6:30 a.m. and they close at 7:30 p.m. and you are in line at 7:30 p.m., you are allowed to vote. If you rolled up in line at 7:29, and you stand in line and they will allow you to vote. They will allow you to exercise your ballot. Now, if you roll up in line at 7:33, you might have some problems. Well, you're going to have some problems because at that point the polls will be closed. They are open for 17 days prior to election day, and they're open from 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. on election day. That's a lot of time for you to be able to vote. I also wanted to make it clear that employers cannot prohibit you from voting. Employers cannot prohibit you from voting. Okay. If the only time that you have to go and vote because of your job is on election day, and you can go, if you have to go early in the morning before work, or you have to, leave work a little early so that you can get there by 7:30, that is completely, employers cannot prohibit you from voting. It's just like jury duty. They can't stop you from being on jury, serving on a jury. This is your federal right. This is your right to vote. And if you find anybody that's telling you that you cannot vote because your employer is telling you can't go vote, oh baby, they're gonna have some problems on their hands with the Federal Elections Commission and with the State Board of Elections because they cannot tell you that you can't go vote. Okay. So, let's see, where were we? We were told we did early voting. We know what time early voting starts. It usually is at about 8 a.m. on the weekdays. It's 10 a.m. on the weekends, except for the last day in Guilford County. It opens at 8 a.m. It goes to 3 p.m. So now we have gotten through early voting. We have rested on Sunday the 3rd. We have rested, well, y'all have rested on Sunday the 3rd and on Monday the 4th. On Monday the 4th, I'm pretty sure I will be running around with my hair this big because all the things are going to be going on. So now here it is, Tuesday, November the 5th. It is election day. And who is excited? I will be excited. There's some things that I want you to remember. During early voting, you can vote across your county as long as you're registered in your county or you're going to get registered in your county, right? On election day, you can only vote in your assigned precinct. Okay, I'm going to say that again. And I'm not saying it slow to be, to be smart, but I just do want people to know that on election day, I need you to vote in your precinct. And I've given you the link in order to find where your precinct is. You have to vote in your precinct, okay? I don't know how many times during an election cycle I'll have someone call me and say, "Hey, Montica, how come I can't vote at the Dudley building at North Carolina A&T?" And I'll say, "Well, is that your assigned precinct?" Well, no, but can I vote there anyway? I'll do on the computer. I'll pull up their information, and they're supposed to vote all the way across town somewhere in Greensboro. I'm like, "Why are you at the Dudley Center?" "Well, that's where I was supposed to vote all before." I said, "Baby, that's where you're supposed to vote during early voting, or Barber Park, or any of the other places that you could possibly go. On election day, you can only vote in your precinct." And then, that person proceeded to tell me how stupid that was, but I was like, okay, I can't change that. That is what it is, and that's what we've got. You can only vote in your precinct, okay? Wherever you are assigned to vote on election day, that is where you go. Polls open at 6:30 a.m. They close at 7:30 p.m., okay? Please don't forget your ID. Please don't forget it. Now, there's a couple of things that you might want to remember. And I also want to say this, in addition to the Board of Elections, to your county Board of Elections, to your state Board of Elections, there's a number of voting guides that I think I have one. There's a number of voting guides where you can also find this information. For example, this is the Guilford County voting guide. We had some of these at our desert meeting a couple weeks ago. This is the nonpartisan voting guide. This has folks that are specifically for Guilford County. We have some for the state as well. But all of this information can be found in here. The same information that I'm giving you can be found in voter guides that are going all across the city, all across the state in different communities. And it's going to be very specific to your community. There's another one that's kind of out and about. It's the 2024 Judicial Voter Guide. It's a little bit smaller, but it's got all of this information in the back of the voter guide. And it's also got QR codes so that if you want to scan those codes, it will give you detailed information about all of the things that I'm telling you. Okay, so there's multiple ways to find this information. And that's honestly, it's one of the things that I'm referencing right now, because like I said, while I know a lot about a lot of things, I don't know everything about everything. Contrary to what people seem to think that I do. Much as I wish I knew everything, unfortunately, I don't. So I do have to sometimes get cheat sheets and notes and things like that to give you guys the best information that I can find. So you will be asked to show photo ID at your polling place when you check in to vote. Most voters will simply show their driver's license, but there are many other acceptable forms of ID. For information, including the full list of acceptable IDs, I'm going to put this in the voter guide. Miss Carolyn, this will probably help your son out. Bring it nc.gov. That's going to have a list of acceptable pieces of information, acceptable pieces of identification so that you can go and vote. Okay. If you do not have photo ID when you vote, you can there are other ways to meet the photo ID requirement. You can fill out a form explaining why you are unable to show identification. There are some folks who are, older folks who just don't have it for whatever reason. They didn't, their driver's license has expired. They don't drive anymore. They don't really go anywhere. Identification is not necessary. So they can always fill out the form. They or their representative can fill out that particular form, and then they can sign it in front of elections officials. Or you can show your ID at your county board of elections by 5 p.m. on November the 14th, which is 9 days after the election. Let's just say, for sake of conversation, that you lost your wallet, right? You were busy during early voting. It wasn't something you could do, and you had your wallet stolen on the 4th of November, right? And you can't go to the DMV and get an ID. Well, you can let the folks at the Board of Elections know that you got your wallet stolen, but I still want to go and vote, and they will give you a form that says, "Thank you so much for voting. You have 9 days to show us your picture ID." And I know the Department of Motor Vehicles, if you get a new identification, they give you a paper ID. Because it is state issued, the Board of Elections, they have said that they will accept that during that 9-day period. It doesn't have to be the plastic one. They just have to see some kind of something that came from the state of North Carolina that has your identification on it. Okay. And that's a for instance. That's not something that I actually know, to be, I've never known that to be a situation, but based on the information and based on the intelligence that I have, that is absolutely the case. Okay. Finally, I just want, I know this is going to be a very contentious election cycle. We've already seen how ugly some of the rhetoric has gotten. We've seen how divisive some of the campaigns have chosen and opted to be toward each other and toward the American people who may not agree with them. I can't tell anybody, I'm never in a place that I'm ever going to tell anyone who to vote for. I know, what I believe, and I know the individuals that support my values. So I know who I will be voting for. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to be rude or crude or crass to any of the people who are on the other side of the aisle. If they are rude, crude, or crass to you, you have every opportunity to go into the polling place and tell your chief judge that someone was rude or they were offensive or they were mean or whatever the situation was. And you let the election officials deal with that. Okay. You don't have to go back and forth with people. You don't have to get into, a fussing and cussing contest with folks. And there are going to be people from the two different parties, or from the several different parties, I guess, in the state of North Carolina to kind of keep people honest, right? I've done that work before. It can be a little bit taxing at times. One time, a few years ago, I was doing some poll observation, and I actually have a gentleman in Wake County. This is when I was living in Raleigh. I have a gentleman in Wake County that I used to love to do poll observing for. He was a Republican, but we just didn't take any crap from either side, from either campaign. And we called things as we saw them. We called the balls and the strikes. And it just was really, really great to work with him because he didn't take any guff off Republicans any more than I took any guff off Democrats. But you don't have to be abused just to go and exercise your right to vote. And you don't have to be abused just because you may think or feel differently than the people that are there. If you don't want their information they're passing out to you, just, no, thank you, I'm good to go. Thanks so much. I've made up my mind. Even if you haven't. But thank you very much. Or you can accept their information. That's totally up to you too. But the Board of Elections does need to know if people are mean or, if they're being disrespectful to you in any way. So, or if you see anything, when they say if you see something, say something. If you see something, say something. Say something to the people, to the elections officials, and they will manage that. So, well, I've been talking for a skinny minute. And while I do love the sound of my own voice, Miss Carolyn asked an awesome question. I know y'all have some questions out there. I know y'all do. And if not, I want you to come up with one. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what you're thinking. I would love to know what you guys are, what's going through your boggle and how I can help. Nobody has anything to ask?
Well, silence is golden, and I would like to thank you so much for joining us and giving us helpful tips for this election year. As you stated, this is a very important election. Our voice, our vote is our voice, and we need to take someone to the polls, make sure our family and friends are signed up to vote. To I'm just so overwhelmed with how important this election is. Our rights are at stake. So if there are no further questions, comments, I would like to introduce to this body the Royal Grand Perfect Matron, Ladidra Wright, for remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us. Sister Talmadge, thank you so very much for that helpful information. One of the things that I did learn today that I did not know that had changed was about doing the straight Democratic ticket. I have or straight Democratic or Republican ticket. So I did not know that. We were just talking about that yesterday, and I thought that I had a aunt that I could tell her just to go and do that. But now I know she has to fill out her ballot completely. I do see that we have some guests on here with us. I see that we have our Royal Grand Chief Advisor with it. Do you have anything, sir?
No, ma'am, Royal Grand Perfect Matron. Not at this time. I just soaking in all the information. I've already voted, and I'm going to see my family this evening, make sure that they are also going to get it. And if any complications or any problems, I know how to get them situated. Once again, thank you so much for the opportunity, and thanks for the most valuable information. And I'm here in Durham, North Carolina. I do my early voting at North Carolina Central University. Go Eagles!
Okay.
Thank
Oh, I do see one question. Thank you so much, Royal Grand Chief Advisor. I do see one question on past Royal Grand, Linda Riggins Rose.
Yes, I was just going to say that me working with voter registration, that I have been helping family and friends to include my coworkers. I've been working with them. I've been printing out sample ballots for them so they can know and have the opportunity to look over that sample ballot. It's very, very, very important. And as she said, it's going to be a little different. Most of it's going to be the same, but maybe the commissioner, soil and water, stuff like that, they may be different people. But other than that, that is a great way to help someone, is to work with them on the sample ballots. That's what I've been doing with my coworkers and people that I know, is printing. I've been even emailing them to them, mailing their ballots to them, their sample ballots to them, especially the older ones that feel like they don't know exactly how to go and pull it up. So I'm just assisting.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. Yes, that I think that is definitely what we have to do. Like I said, take somebody with you. I see Right Grand Deputy Master Michael Duncan. Do you have anything, sir?
Good evening, Grand. I just want to say I apologize for my tardiness getting on, but the information that I did hear, it was valuable, great information. I plan to early vote, and I hope that this call has inspired everybody else to inspire someone else. So thank you for the invite, and thank you for the call.
No problem, sir. And again, I would like to yield to our most worshipful Grandmaster Daniel L.D.T. Thompson. I see you on, sir. Do you have anything, sir?
All I want to say is great job, great information. Go out, vote. Thank you.
He's always so nice and short and sweet to the point. I see Sister Mills has a question.
Good evening. I do have a question because I voted Friday. I had my paper to vote with, and the question that was deemed for me to say disapprove, I read it and I was trying to understand, why should I say disapprove? Why should I disapprove that? When everybody in North Carolina, if you're 18 and older, would you be able to vote anywhere? Why would that be a no?
The reason, and thank you so much for asking that question, Miss Carolyn. The reason why they're asking people what the push for folks to vote no against that is for just the reason why you just said. Like in North Carolina, you have to be 18 anyway in order to exercise your ballot. Excuse me, you can register at 16, but you cannot exercise your ballot or exercise the right to vote until you're 18 in North Carolina. The word that hangs people up and the word that is problematic about that particular constitutional amendment is the word citizen. I am born in the state of Ohio. I am an American. I'm born and bred in the United States of America. There is no question as to my citizenry, right? According to my birth certificate, I am as American as apple pie. But where it's kind of vague is when you say citizen, does that mean a naturalized citizen? Does that mean a person who has done the work to become a citizen in this country? The word citizen is very vague. And one of the things that we've seen happen in the state of North Carolina is when we have a constitutional amendment, the amendment is passed, and then the bill or the law that goes along to enforce it is then written. And that's a very dangerous place to be, because now something has been codified into the Constitution. And I'd like to explain this to people by saying the Constitution says everyone should eat baked goods in this on Sundays, right? They don't say what baked goods, they just say baked goods. Well, what the General Assembly says, pound cake is the only baked good, that's very, very vague. And so you're creating policy on an ambiguous idea. So the word that is a problem for a lot of folks is the word citizen. What defines citizen according to the law that they're trying to make? So that's the only reason we were asking people, and I've been a part of those conversations, and folks were asking folks to vote against that because we need more. It needs more body. It needs more verbiage. It needs more definition as to what a citizen is. Does that help at all?
It does, but I didn't. I'll put yes.
It's fine. I mean, it's fine. It just it was your it was your.
I mean, I just read it and I kept reading it, and I'm like, you know, if you're a citizen and you're 18.
No, it makes total sense.
Yeah, so
we haven't, and that's part of that. It's our own fault, at least in the industry that I'm in. We haven't done the best job of educating the public about that, because there's been so many massively huge things that have been on the ballot and been kind of on the political zeitgeist that we haven't had the opportunity to really educate people on that. So that is, I will, definitely mea culpa and kind of step into that line of fire, that we haven't had the opportunity, or we haven't taken the opportunity to educate as well as we should have. But that's also sort of what the powers that be in the legislature kind of want. They kind of wanted us to not be able to educate on that because the other issues were so massively huge. But hopefully, what we can do is, in light of that, we can put people in the General Assembly who can really be our voices at the table when that law is being really written. They can be our voices at the table, and they can kind of stand in the gap and make sure that information is very clear as to how a citizen is defined in the state of North Carolina.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Past program Purple Matron Dickinson, I see your hand up.
Hey, how are you? Good evening. I mean, that was one of my questions there, because how soon in advance would you know about a question like that? Because see, that's what's going to confuse it, and that's what's scary, because certain things may get changed like that because people really don't have the clear understanding of the vagueness of the verbiage of what is being said. Because just like her, I read it and I'm like, okay, let me go back and get a clear understanding of this. And I know you say that hopefully we'll have someone at the table to could kind of get that information out prior to. But doing so, when it comes time to changing the Constitution to have that amended, corrected, however you want to put it, it is going to be an issue, because I'm pretty sure this issue is going to come up again, because a lot of us wasn't educated on the correct verbiage of the meaning behind versus nationality. You, like you said, you get to work to get in. So I think that's going to be a big key issue with the election going forward, because that is going to be very, very detrimental with the election, because now we're knowing about it now. But I think now that we do know about it, more information need to get out there and say, hey, this is why you should vote against it because of this, even though we don't know the complete background of it. But this is a general idea of what's going on, so you can be somewhat aware of the verbiage and how it's the meaning of it. Because, my mom used to say long time ago, come and don't follow everybody's sense, but you want to make sure you get it out there for even like a 2-year-old can understand this is what it's possibly could lead up to if this happens.
Absolutely. No, I am 100% in agreement with all of you and with your comments. I was like, you have to be a constitutional scholar to understand that wording. And I'm like, it's so vague that they've written it so vaguely that it could mean anything. And like we have not done the best job of educating our public on what this constitutional amendment is. And I will 1,000% fall on my sword and say, I hate that I'm having these conversations with people now, as opposed to having them, you know, 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks ago, to really start explaining what this constitutional amendment means. And when we were just talking about the constitutional amendments some years back, which is how we got voter ID, that was another issue that we had, is that they were so vague. They were written so, I mean, just so vaguely that it's hard to get people to say, well, no, I'm not going to vote against that, because you have to be 18 in North Carolina to vote as it is. So why would I vote? Why would I vote against that? So that's definitely our fault this cycle, for not educating people, especially, I'll say for my community, for our Black community, not educating our Black community better, as to why we want people to vote against that. I expect, and I hate that this is what the way this sort of works. I expect that this is going to go to court. I highly expect that this is going to go into the court system, because it is written so vaguely, and it's written so just very, very, like the day after Sunday is Monday. Well, yeah, of course the day after Sunday is Monday. So give us more information as to what it is that you want us to understand as voters. So I definitely feel you on that we needed to have educated people better. But since we're here, I want to, any group I'm in front of, any group of people that I get a chance to talk to, I want to make sure that I can explain it from my vantage point, and explain the way it's been explained to me, and why we want people to vote. Why we want people to vote against it. If folks have already voted for it, it is what it is. It's a constitutional amendment. So the next thing that we have to ensure that we do is make sure that there are people in our legislature, and we're only 2 votes away from flipping the look of the legislature in both the Senate and the House. We have a seat in the Senate and a seat in the House, from flipping the way that the legislature looks, and flipping the balance of power in the legislature. So if we can flip some of these seats, if we can get some of these seats, we can ensure that when the law that the constitutional amendment will support, and vice versa, when the law that the constitutional amendment speaks directly to, we can ensure that particular law is as specific as it possibly can be, and we make sure that it reads the way that it's supposed to protect as many people in the state of North Carolina as we can.
Is there a place where you can direct myself and some of the other members here, so that way that for those of us who have not voted yet, that we can give them more information, so that way for those who can read that information and understand that when they're going, that, hey, this is what this is for, and this is why we would like for, to explain it to them. Because myself, I haven't voted yet. And like I said, so now that I'm hearing this, I'm like, wow, because I probably would have been one standing there reading the question the exact same way.
Yes, what I can do is I can get the constitutional amendment information. I don't have it right at hand. It's in another email address, and I would unfortunately have to dig through it, because I haven't been at work for 2 days. So I'm pretty sure you can tell what my inbox looks like. And what I can do is I can send it to Sylvia D. Little, and she can send it to you all. If you have any questions, or if you all want to engage with me directly, my email address is in the chat. That's my personal email address, montica.talmadge@gmail.com. If you have any questions about this, and I will make a note to get the constitutional amendment information to you all tomorrow. If you have any other questions, if you have any comments, concerns, whatever those things are, please shoot me an email, and I will do my best to respond to you by the end of that business day. Even if it's hey, I see your email, I'm looking up the information, and I will shoot it back to you as soon as I get it. But I will get that constitutional amendment information to you first thing tomorrow, and I will send it to leadership.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. And again, I just want to say thank you to Sylvia and Angelique for helping us get this information together. I think it's something very, very important that we needed, because we know that November 5th is coming, and we have to get our voice out there. It's our voice, our vote, it matters. So again, if you have not voted, if you need to get to the polls, please call us, let us know, and we will make sure that you get there. Does anybody else have anything else that they need or would like to say? If not, again, I just want to thank you guys all for coming. As soon as we get that information, I will make sure that I get it out. Mike, I'll also make sure that you get it. So that way you can also share it with the desert and anyone else that needs that information. So if there's no other further questions or concerns, again, thank you guys so very much. And we will see you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you guys.
Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
evening.